So that kind of prejudice is what we're up against with ourselves, with our friends, with our loved ones, and with our medical practitioners. So let's go over some of the quick. I want to focus on hormones and mental health. So hormonal changes in menopause. This is a very rudimentary overview, but I want to get us all kind of on the same page. Sharp decline in estrogen, of course. Estrogen is the first thing that starts to decline. And this has a whole host of symptoms, but estrogen has a lot to do with us staying asleep at night. So that was another one of my first symptoms was I was waking up in the middle of the night. Never had sleep issues my whole life. Progesterone decreases. So of course, estrogen and progesterone, the sex hormones, and testosterone decrease. Progesterone is what helps us get to sleep at night. Estrogen is what helps us stay asleep at night. So, and dramatically affecting our mood. Testosterone, if you think of it as more that masculine energy, impacts our libido, of course, our sex drive, but also our sense of agency and our sense of resilience, our sense of like, go get them, initiative, I've got this, confidence. So I also experienced a dramatic shift and lowering of my confidence, which I'd never had. And I couldn't figure out, like, why am I so paranoid? Why am I so locked in insecurity? And I couldn't make further steps in my career for the first time. I was really blocked with insecurity. And this is also what I started to notice. Oh, that's my low testosterone, right? We don't have to take it personally. We don't have to interpret everything as I'm wrong, I'm doing something bad. This is hormonal shifts. Cortisol elevates, our stress hormone elevates, which of course impacts inflammation, our overall health, our blood sugar, our metabolism, which is part of why we start to get that increased belly fat and lower metabolism. And then insulin resistance can increase, which is our ability to metabolize sugar and respond to sugar in our system, dramatically affecting our metabolism. So estrogen, here's some of the connection with our mental health. Estrogen supports serotonin production. Serotonin is that feel-good hormone, mood regulation, general sense of well-being, right? Feel good. Estrogen also helps us to maintain optimal levels of dopamine, which affects pleasure. Dopamine is the pleasure hormone, pleasure neurotransmitter, and our motivation. Another thing I lost was motivation. I would sit down here in my office and just be like spacing out. I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to do anything. Very apathetic, loss of motivation. There's a great scientific study that's been published showing that the fluctuation in estrogen levels during menopause is associated with an increase in depression and anxiety. Before perimenopause, women are half as likely to experience depression as men. After perimenopause, women are twice as likely to experience depression as men. So our incidence of depression and anxiety, and I really consider those almost comorbid because they go together so often, increases dramatically. Women are so easily prescribed SSRIs and SNRIs, and that can be a great option. Of course, it's necessary for many people. I like the adage, no pills without skills, because I think it's really important that we learn how to manage our mind and not just affect our biochemistry. But the drop in estrogen dramatically increases our risk of depression and brain health. So that's a whole other topic. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because it's not as much of my forte. And there's an incredible book if you're interested. Of course, Dr. Lisa Mosconi's work that she just came out with this incredible discovery of the impact of lowered estrogen on our brains. And just a quick aside for any of you who may not know, she was studying Alzheimer's because her grandmother and all four of her grandmother's sisters got Alzheimer's. And the brother did not get Alzheimer's. She's Italian, and she was very interested in why is it that women have, I don't know the exact number. If you do, you can put it in the chat. Almost a twice as much likelihood to experience Alzheimer's. What she found completely secondarily, like inadvertently, was the effect of estrogen on the brain. And estrogen lowers our gray matter. Estrogen increases, lowered estrogen, I should say, I'm sorry, increases plaque in the brain. And, she's now drawing all of the scientific evidence of why this may lead to increased dementia and Alzheimer's for women later in life. Now, when she discovered this, what happened was she was studying and taking all these brain scans for women in particular, looking at all these brain scans, studying Alzheimer's and trying to figure out what is the factor that's causing this. Why are women so much more at risk than men? She was putting them into these, like MRI, tight things. And all of a sudden, several of the women were saying, you know what, I can't do this. I'm having a hot flash. I'm in the middle of menopause, like perimenopause. I can't do this scan right now. And a light bulb went off. And she was like, wait, perimenopause, menopause, drop it. I wonder what the effect of low estrogen is on the brain. So then she went to go look for all the studies that have been done on estrogen in the brain. And there were no studies that have been done on lack of estrogen in the brain. And so number one, she was shocked. And so number two, then she took it up and started studying women's brain scans before and after with different levels of estrogen. And now she's making all of these discoveries. So for those of you that are, the reason to consider how to balance our estrogen and maintain a sufficient level of estrogen in our system is not just because of perimenopause symptoms. It is because of our brain health. There are estrogen receptors in every single organ system in our body. We understand now the effect on bone health, of course, on cardiovascular health. Women's increase of heart disease goes up. My cholesterol all of a sudden has gone up. I've never had any issues in my body, in my health. My cholesterol is high now, and that's often the case for women. That's also a common side effect, or symptom, I should say, of perimenopause. So one more piece that I want to lay down is that women were not required, at least in the United States, to be a part of medical studies were not requiring women to be a part of the studies until the 1990s. This is when I was in college. In the 1990s, it was only then required that any medical study was looking at both men and women. So we know how different men and women's bodies are, and obviously our hormonal makeups, and then, add into that perimenopause, menopause. And so there is such a lack of research. And luckily, at least in the United States, President Biden just passed a bill to dedicate millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to menopause research. So I'm telling you all of this because one of the things that I hear most commonly from my friends, I will say, is that they don't want to do hormone replacement therapy because they want to tackle menopause naturally and they don't want to mess with their hormones. They just want to let it all happen. And I'm not here to advise on whether you do hormone replacement therapy or not, but what I am here to advocate for is you get very educated on the effect of low estrogen, progesterone, testosterone on all the systems of your body. And you may not be experiencing symptoms of perimenopause, but it's important to understand the impact on your longevity and on the quality of your life in all different realms of your health and wellness. So specifically today, I'm focusing on mental health. And then I know we have one of my students who's going to jump on here in a second. Okay, progesterone. Progesterone promotes the production of GABA. This is a neurotransmitter. It's called the calming neurotransmitter, which helps us reduce anxiety. So when there's low progesterone, there's higher anxiety. I have been experiencing racing thoughts. I've really had to employ not just meditation, although I'm listening to a yoga nidra to go to sleep almost every night, but really having to do more cognitive behavioral, more really specific psychology practices to tackle the racing thoughts and the anxiety. Again, progesterone, I take progesterone now at night. Typically you take progesterone at night because it helps you go to sleep. Okay, tell me if looks like I might be stalling a little bit here. Okay, testosterone, as I mentioned, influencing dopamine, boosting mood, energy, and libido. Decline in testosterone leads to decreased motivation and increased fatigue. Raise your hand, put in the chat if anyone can relate to that. Yes. The menopause brain and also the XX brain. Sasha or Sarah Jane, you were asking about Dr. Mosconi's work. So I that was one of the things that really surprised me was my sort of like the bottom fell out. The bottom fell out of my motivation and my ambition and my ability to follow through on things. And maybe some of you said this, I know you have because I see you in the survey saying I didn't recognize myself. And I still kind of don't. It's gotten a lot better, but I am a very different person than I was 3 years ago. And I did not recognize how I was relating to the world, how I was relating to work, what I wanted to do. Some of this is okay. Some of this is not bad. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. But it was a dramatic shift and it has deeply impacted, not only my life, my sense of self, my career, all of those things. Number 2, insulin regulating blood sugar and mood swings and energy fluctuations. I started wearing a continuous glucose monitor and have had to really, again, dial up my nutrition, understand my metabolic health, because I don't have an option. I really don't have an option. I'm looking at depression and anxiety if I don't take care of my fitness, my nutrition, and my self-care has absolutely become number 1. So insulin resistance can contribute to depressive symptoms due to impaired glucose metabolism in the brain. I have some studies for all of this stuff. Cortisol as well, of course, a stress hormone. Chronic high levels of cortisol lead to anxiety, depression, and cognitive impairment. Okay. I want to move down to shift gears a little bit. That's an overview of the hormones. Again, there's so much, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this tomorrow, of what we can do to naturally bolster our hormonal balance and really take things into our own hands. And I would highly recommend you consider speaking to a physician about hormone replacement therapy. I do want to mention there is, of course, a lot of fear around hormone replacement therapy, particularly for cancer survivors or people with cancer in their family history. There's so many incredible studies. First of all, the WIH study, the WHI, Women's Health Initiative, it came out in the 90s, was done on the wrong group of people at the wrong age. And it was, the findings were skewed. I'm not going to go into the weeds on that at all, but that study was taken and blown up in the media, stating that hormone replacement therapy causes cancer or can increase the risk of breast cancer. And that has been proven to be a failed statement. Even the WHI has come back and retracted that statement. And there are I will put in the email, there are a couple people that are doing some really good work. One of them is a gynecologist who's a breast cancer survivor. Another one is another gynecologist whose wife was a breast cancer survivor. And they are helping us understand that the connection between hormone replacement therapy and breast cancer it does not actually increase for most people the risk of breast cancer. And there's a lot more to understand about that. So again, I hear from my friends all the time, because now I'm having this conversation everywhere I go. Any one of my students or friends that has had breast cancer, uterine, cervical cancer is saying I'm not a candidate. And that is actually not true. So it's a much more nuanced conversation. I am not the expert in this, but I will give you some links to experts who are. And it is a much more nuanced conversation to have with a healthcare provider, because many people, I just talked to one of my friends in the yoga world, who had breast cancer, and his wife, her husband was saying like she had started on hormone replacement therapy and then had breast cancer. And he was saying how detrimental it is that she's not on hormone replacement therapy, because the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause are really debilitating. And they were extremely debilitating for me. And so I was telling him about these doctors, and like, it's a bigger conversation to have. So I just want to plant that seed for those of you that fall into that group. And I know there are many, many, many people, and it is a very nuanced conversation. But there's a lot of scientific evidence coming out in support of it. So I just wanted to state that. So I want to shift gears to the specific mental health challenges in midlife. Now, in the metamorphosis that I am rolling out, which is a 6-month mentorship and small group cohort program, it's not really an online course. It's it's a mentorship, it's a community. It's for us to go together through this and really do the deep inner work. And I'm breaking it down by segments. Each one of the months, 6 months from June to November, is focusing on a specific theme. And we have a specific guest teacher, and we're doing deeper inner work. In this program, and what I want to talk about now is the psychology of midlife. And so, yes, we want to talk about all of the physiology and the biochemistry, but now moving into the depth psychology and more of the shadow work and the inner work of this journey, there are 2 frameworks that I am finding incredibly helpful and are literally saving me. Number 1 is Carl Jung's 7 tasks of midlife. So Carl Jung, as many of you know, Swiss psychologist, one of the foremost really psychonauts of our time, right? Really endeavoring to understand and master the human psyche. And he had a major awakening in his midlife. And he devoted a lot of his work in his 40s, 50s, 60s to really understanding this midlife, what he called the middle phase of life, the second half of life. Now, I want to say I'm making a distinction between, there's another model that we have a lot in Divine Feminine, which is the maiden, the mother, and the crone. So we have this 3-tiered version of life, maybe like 30 years, 20 years, 20 years, 20 years. But now we're living so much longer. And I don't actually think that 3-tiered version is accurate for what most of us right now in midlife are experiencing. We still have this old model that like someone at 50, which I'm turning 50, is like over the hill, or 40 used to be, right? Over the hill. And that's the second half of life. Well, many of us are living now into the 80s and 90s. And so I don't yet orient and identify with the archetype of the crone, right? That to me is a little bit older. It's definitely an elder. I definitely feel like I'm stepping into eldership, but I don't yet feel like I'm quite in the crone energy, right? Obviously, I still have a 3-year-old daughter. So I'm in the mother phase. And that's also a phenomenon that's happening. There's a lot of women that are still mothering children, some of us very young children, in our menopausal years. So we have this interesting overlap where it wasn't as much that way in our parents' time. Most people were probably done doing the big raising of the children by the time, 50 rolled around. But so I want to first of all insert a 4th archetype into that maiden, mother, crone wheel. And this comes from my teacher, Dr. Joan Borysenko, and she added a layer in between mother and crone, which she called the guardian. And I actually, what resonates a little more for me is the empress archetype, the queen archetype, and the wise woman archetype, right? And then we tilt into the crone energy. But regardless, we are stepping into a different phase of life and a different phase of identity, a shift in our identity. I no longer identify as a young maiden. I no longer identify with wanting or needing to be that sex pot and be attractive, particularly, in my case, heterosexual to men. I was so identified with that for so long. And Dr. Sarah Gottfried talks a lot about this with her daughters, seeing her daughters at 20 years old, like putting so much energy and attention on what they look like before they go out the door. And she just doesn't care. She, not that she always looks wonderful, right? But that identity and that drive has shifted. And I've certainly felt that myself, that identity and drive to be primarily identified as a sexual or attractive object of desire has completely shifted. And that energy has turned inward. And that turning inward of psyche is what Jung talked about in the middle phase of life. So the turning inward of our energy is also the turning inward of our blood. And when we get into the blood mysteries, what we're going to talk more about in Metamorphosis is the blood mysteries of that psychic turning inward. And now, how do I want to channel that energy? And this is what Joan Borasinko talks about. We then channel it. We often have a drive to channel it into service, to being a mentor, to being a guide, to being a guardian, an advocate for others on this planet. Our drives, our ego drives, shift from being so egocentric to being more altruistic and of service. And if you can relate to that, let me know. I feel so much less egoic need to be seen, to be even online. I've been almost unable to post on social media the last couple of years. It's been pretty rare. And it actually was very repulsive to me. The egoic qualities of our culture was very repulsive to me. And I've had to be making peace with that and finding a new relationship to that. So these are some of the topics that we are going to be deeply steeping in Metamorphosis. How do we step fully over that threshold into this Empress era, into our Queen era? Here's an example I'll give you. I noticed over the last couple of years that I was still looking in this old way online. I was looking at, all of these business gurus, online business gurus, and this whole boss babe culture, and all of these women, many of them younger than me, 10, 15, even 20 years younger than me, with this huge drive and this huge following on social media and this impetus and this conditioning that this is what we should be doing. This is how we should be doing business or doing life, right? And it was really adding to my depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. Now, I was already vulnerable, as I just mentioned before, but there was something else going on there. And I really started to explore that, like, what is that? And then when I went back and now started listening to all of these elders, Joan Borasinko, Dr. Christian Northrup, Dr. Sarah Gottfried, Dr. Maureen Murdoch, beautiful women who are really embodying this eldership and this other way of living, and Sally Kempton, I started to realize again my ageism. And I'm looking at this old young model of being and thinking, oh, I should be posting like that on Instagram, or I should be building my business like that, or I should be wanting all of those things when I actually don't give a fuck. I really don't. I'm not a fashionista. I don't need to do all of that stuff. That's just one example. But it was such a big shift in my own psyche. And it wasn't until very recently that I started orienting, and I'm about ready to unfollow like a whole slew of people because it is actually triggering for me. But what's triggering for me is a few things. One of them is my own ageism. I don't want to consider the fact that I'm 15 or 20 years older. And I also have a hard time letting go of that archetype of where I was for the last 20 years. That is a truth that I don't hear anybody talking about. I'm having a hard time letting go of the maiden energy or the mother energy. I'm still in that mother, but you know what I mean? The sensual sexual identity. Not that I'm saying we have to totally let go of that, not at all. But I'm having a hard time letting go of that way of being and orienting to the world. And in the same moment, it does not fit anymore. And I cannot do it anymore. My inner psyche will not let me do it anymore. And I think, and I believe as a depth psychologist, that is part of the depression rising up. That is part of the discomfort that I'm feeling because I am molting a very big old skin. And there is no support out there in the world for how do we do that? How do we do that gracefully? How do we do it in a messy way? How do we get rageful? Because I have a lot of rage. Let me tell you, a lot of rage is coming up right now in my life. Rage towards all of the ways of misogyny in our world, rage towards our medical system, and the fact that here we are as very educated, mostly, wise, awake, and very privileged. We have to, talk about privilege too, because there's so many people who don't even have access to this kind of medical care, much less the fact that we really have to advocate for ourselves, even if we have very holistic medical teams, which I do. And I'm still not getting the care that I want. They're still not on the cutting edge of the science and what's going on, right? So I have a lot of rage towards all of these things, not to mention the beauty myth and ageism and all of that. And then, on top of that, the wars in the environment, right? So this is that guardian coming online where I cannot tolerate it anymore. And I have to open my voice and start using it in a bigger way. And so that's what metamorphosis in this right here is about. Okay. Yes, hard to admit that we're changing, Carrie says. So relate. Okay. So I want to really frame this with these two models of Jung's tasks of midlife, these 7 tasks of midlife. And the first one of those tasks is acknowledging and embracing our mortality. So that is one of the first steps in this phase of development, is to really do the work to make peace with our mortality. And it is not easy for most of us. And it is actually probably the biggest work of our lives, right? And the second framework that we will be using a lot in metamorphosis that I think is really important right now is the heroine's journey. So I'm going to speak a little bit about this. Then I think we're going to launch over to, I believe it's Lisa. Let's see who's here with us. And then I'm going to tell you about metamorphosis. And I'm sorry we got started a little late here because this is because of our software situation. So the heroine's journey is a formula, a framework from Maureen Murdoch. Maureen Murdoch was a student at Pacifica Graduate Institute, where I went for my graduate program. When Joseph Campbell was coming out, he was very aligned with Pacifica Graduate Institute back in, this is probably maybe the 80s. And he was coming out and doing talks at Pacifica Graduate Institute. And Maureen Murdoch was tasked with being his assistant on those programs. And so she got to know him well and study with him in that context. While he had come up with the monomyth of the hero's journey, she was realizing and studying with women, like it's not exactly the same for women. Joseph Campbell famously said, well, women don't need to do the hero's journey because they already are the destination. They already are where the hero is trying to get, right? She was looking at the hero's journey and saying, it's so masculine, like slaying the dragon and going, the quest of your own adventure and all of this external kind of fighting and warring. It had a very masculine tone. And also, it didn't overlap with what her experience and her client's experience was of the female psyche. So here again, we have that very late date, realizing like, oh, again, all of these frameworks and formulas have been modeled after the masculine archetype, whether it's our medical, system or our psychological system. And we have very different psyches. We have different frameworks. Now, this is not to say that all men and women need to be generalized together, but it is to say that we need to explore a more feminine approach. And so the heroine's journey is something that I have been very deeply diving into. And I have found it really applying to what I've been experiencing in my own psyche. One of the first phases of the heroine's journey, the first, is the disconnect from the feminine. There's a loss of feminine. And so where Joseph Campbell's model is that the hero has a quest for adventure. They're being called to adventure, right? In the heroine's journey, we recognize that we have been separated from the feminine. And this speaks to everything that I just shared with you about my own journey and where my own shadow has been coming up and where my own depression has been coming up and what is underlying my own depression and anxiety. There are a couple things deeply at the root of that. The first of them is my own internalized patriarchy and my own internalized misogyny, my own internalized ageism. I have been having to deal with the fact that I don't like getting older. I don't like seeing, my own beauty fade. And I mean, that's just one term. That's not really an accurate statement, right? We know that. But I don't like being perceived by the outer world at an older age, right? All of these things are reflecting back to me my own inner ageism. And so we can go to the career, and if we come full circle talking about the hormones and mental health, where I'm feeling a shift in my agency, in my ambition, in my desire, in my core values. I don't want to run a business in the way that I used to run it. I don't want to hustle in the way that I used to do it. I'm allowing myself to create and generate from a more feminine paradigm. Now, that is not necessary. That is not what we are sold in the outer world. That is not what is accepted and what is valued in the outer world. So it takes an extra effort to stand firm and say, I'm going to do this in a feminine way. Someone just asked, is there a workbook for this program, right? This 3-day program? No, there's not a workbook right now. You want to know why there's not a workbook? I don't have the capacity to create a workbook right now. The next time we launch this, I will have a workbook probably. But right now, I'm giving myself the grace and standing for what I believe, which is launching a brand new program and offering it to all of you in a way that feels really aligned and not in a way that is burning me out and not in a way that is overly salesy. I am speaking very deeply from my heart. I am speaking very deeply from my truth, and that magnetism will draw towards it the people that feel aligned, and the women and the people going through perimenopause or midlife that feel like, yes, this is singing to my soul right now. This is what is missing. That is how we are building out this program, right? From a feminine paradigm. Very different from the bill of goods that we are being sold online right now in online marketing. So I'm not saying, I'll never do another sales email. I'm not saying I'll never come off that way again, maybe, but I am really working to come from an authentic place of femininity. And that's not just in my business, but in my life. And so part of where the depression, my exploration of where this depression and anxiety is coming from is like my soul, my psyche means soul in Latin, is deeply yearning to embody these feminine qualities in a way and to a depth and a degree that I have never yet embodied them. Again, sensuality, mothering, nurturing, caring. I've been talking, if you're getting my emails the last couple of years, I've been saying a lot that I really don't feel called to be teaching big groups of women or big groups of people anymore. I am really called to go much deeper with a smaller group of people that are very devoted and dedicated to each other. And we are each other's peers and on this journey, right? That is my calling. And again, not to say that I would never do something bigger again, but right now, what feels aligned is a much more relational experience. And now it is coming to fruition with Metamorphosis, and I'm really excited about it. So that's an example of how we need to do the inner investigation and take inventory of where in our lives we may still be overly prioritizing or prejudiced towards masculine ways of being, right? Now, we don't have time to go in this now. This is one of the exercises we'll do in Metamorphosis, where we will look at our own internalized gender prejudice. And many of us, and a great book that I would recommend is Our Father's Daughters by Marion Woodman, who's another Jungian analyst. Many of us oriented towards the masculine, oriented towards, and we became, especially in that second wave of feminism, which maybe, was a little before or right as we were coming through, many of us. You think of sort of the 80s, 90s, like the way of like being professional for women in the world was a very masculine way of being. Now, I think it's beginning to shift, and people and business leaders are realizing like, hey, what does feminine leadership look like? What does feminine activation and growth look like? Well, it's much more relational, it's much more sustainable, it's much more horizontal and egalitarian, and much less vertical and power over. And instead, it's power for all, right? Empowering. So those are just some examples, but I've had to really do some deeper work and say, how is my life not aligned right now? How do I need to embody more of that feminine power, and what Maureen Murdoch calls woman power? Now, I don't want to, overly genderize it. I prefer feminine and masculine because it's not really a gender association, doesn't need to be. But woman power, what does that look like? And can I trust myself? Can I trust spirit? Can I trust Shiva, Shakti, yin, yang, the way the Tao enough that I can lead and be from this feminine, and it will flourish and it will magnetize and it will be, equally, if not more rewarding, right? More rewarding because it's more aligned. So this is one piece of the heroine's journey that I want to highlight, the loss of the feminine. And so I'm going to encourage you to consider where you have disconnected from your own femininity, from your own feminine ways of being, where you have overly valued a male or masculine approach. Okay, let me just see really quickly. I need to look at one note here, see how we're doing on timing. We need to go be wrapping it up. Yes. Okay. Oh, Casey. Okay, great. Sorry, I didn't realize it was you, Casey, here. Yay. All right. So I am going to pivot now, and she's still with us, thank goodness, because I know we're going over. I want to bring Casey on. Casey has worked with me for quite a while. Many of you know her because she was the Yoga Psyche Soul mentor. And I just wanted to bring a couple people on each day this week to share with you how it's been working with me and a little bit more about what the inside experience might be like in Metamorphosis. Now, keep in mind, Metamorphosis is a brand new program. So no one has gone through the actual Metamorphosis, but in terms of a deep, more personal, smaller cohort and the kind of work that we will be doing, the transformational work, I wanted to be sure to bring on some people that have worked with me quite in depth and quite personally, so they can share from their own experience. And as soon as we'll talk to Casey for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'm going to tell you all about Metamorphosis because the doors are open today. And we also have a special 48-hour bonus for those of you that, let's see, that would like to jump in. Hi, honey. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and staying on here. Oh my goodness.
Hi, wonderful. Congratulations on this. It was so nice to get to hear more of this story, and just congratulations on this birth. I've gotten to see like a portion of this metamorphosis that you've been going through. And I'm so excited for you.
Yay. I'm so excited for all of us. Actually, I think Casey was on our retreat, our women's retreat in Topanga in December. We had our Elevate retreat. And by the way, I think we're going to end Metamorphosis. We don't have it yet. You can't sign up yet, but the dream is that we will have another women's retreat end of November, early December. So those of you who want to really anchor the whole Metamorphosis and cross the threshold physically together, we will hope to have a medicine retreat in a women's medicine retreat in November, December, because that was really an inspiration. And you're already doing some of this work in the world. So, but I would love to just hear you share a little bit about, working with me, or the way that this kind of work has impacted your life.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting because there's so many themes in everything that you're speaking to. So, just as a quick, like, this is really relevant to me, and I just couldn't recommend what you're offering enough. So I've been struggling with PMDD on and off for the last 4 years. It's usually induced by highly stressful events, mostly surrounding building my own business and a few around entering new phases of my life. And for those who don't know what PMDD is, it's it's rather premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So it's like PMS, but it's PMS. It's really, really, really bad PMS with giant mood disorders. And I'm also 38, so I'm also entering into this stage where it feels a little bit funky because you're not always sure whether the PMDD, there's a lot of similarities in the symptoms between PMDD and perimenopause, right? So there's a whole host of transitions and new ways of existing in the world that I have been learning. And I've been working with Ashley for, I think, 7 years now, since 2017. So a long time. And I've gotten to work with her both as somebody who is a student and who's learning from her, and as an apprentice, as someone who gets to learn from her in an even more in-depth way, and have also gotten to build a friendship with her. So on all levels, just could not speak highly enough about this human, what she's given to the world, which she's gifted mostly through her own transmutation of the lessons that life has chosen to give her and spirit has chosen to give her, and the generosity with which she's not only walked through what she's been given, but then the magnificent way in which she has turned that into a creative feminine force and gifted it back, so that others who don't, who are trying to figure out how to live inside of a world that is wrought with patriarchy and white supremacy and capitalism and a whole host of forces that, for most of us since we were born, are trying to convince us that what our souls are telling us, what our feminine intuition is telling us, what our desire to be connected with each other and with nature are telling us are wrong or are pathologizing, right? So that's that. And I was lucky enough to get to find Ashley about 6 years into PTSD. And interestingly, PTSD is comorbid with PMDD. So if anyone on here has experience with PTSD, the way we're still uncovering the way that interacts with your cycle and with your hormones. And there's some kind of connection, though the research isn't clear what the connection is yet. And so I found Ashley when I was 31 years old, and I had already been 7 years, back in 2017, I'd already done 7 years worth of therapy and coaching and yoga. I was a yoga teacher at that point. Meditation. I can't tell you the tens of thousands of dollars I had dropped at that point, the amount of debt I had chosen to go into just to try to figure. And I have 2 engineering degrees from Stanford. So it was like, I'm smart. I know how to do research. I know how to go collect data. I know how to advocate for myself. And despite all of that, and despite all of the people that I had found, most people didn't believe me. And I can't emphasize enough how disheartening and disempowering it is to walk in this world and to be like, just because your symptoms may be showing up in invisible ways, to not be believed or fully understood. And those that did believe me didn't have the answers, weren't connecting the dots, and had solutions that at best were Band-Aids. And then a friend of mine said, you should check out Ashley Turner. And I was like, okay. Literally, I think I was maybe one of the only people for Ashley's Yoga Psyche Soul who literally called them and was like, no, you don't have to convince me. This isn't a sales call. I just need to know how I pay. Like, where do I put? Do I give you my credit card now? Do I pay it in? Just tell me. And they were like, okay, yeah, sure. And it couldn't have been a better decision. It's probably, if I'm being really honest, probably saved. I know it has changed and transformed my life, and there's a good chance it saved it too. And I mean, everything from the physical practice, the way that I can live and exist inside of my body, which was not something that I really knew how to do with any sense of safety, which I think is an extraordinarily important component of being able to weather the physical changes and the brain changes that Ashley's describing. If you don't know how to live inside of your body to begin with, it makes that transition extra debilitating. To the way that she gave me language and tools and an opportunity to reconnect to my sense of self and soul. My heroine's journey was such that my PTSD came from 2 near-death experiences. So I had to grapple in my 20s with mortality, and it was not a thing that my peer group was doing. And it was really hard. And I don't know that I could have done it, honestly, without Ashley. And there's 1,000 things that I could say she's taught me about what the depth of beauty is that doesn't have anything to do with your look. She's taught me about sensuality and sexuality. She's taught me about how to embody, and not just Ashley, right? She's got a phenomenal lineage of teachers that live inside of her that she has worked with, that her teachers worked with, and you feel the depth and the extent of that lineage when you get to work with Ashley. And the way that that's enriched my life, the friendships that I've built out of it, the way that I've learned how to heal my nervous system, but more importantly, it's my sovereignty. That's been the biggest gift in working with Ashley. Like, I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I do my own life. I travel when I want to. I work when I want to. I work for big corporations when I want to. I work for creative entrepreneurs when I want to. I get to be the greatest aunt in the world. I may or may not become a mother, but I feel a mother to a lot of different folks. I'm not afraid of becoming a crone. There's a lot of parts of me that are like really excited about being a crone. And, um, and that sense of development in self is really like the gift of getting to work with her in many, many different contexts. And then the last thing I'll say before I hand it back over to Ashley is, Ashley said, no pills without skills. So I got to the point where I was using, with this last round of PMDD, I was using all the tools I had. And I have so many skills. I was using every single one of them and nothing was working. And that's when I knew that I had to go in and I had to advocate for myself with my medical team and be like, look, I don't care what you think is going on. I know all the tools and I've been using them. You need to get me on an SSRI ASAP. We're going to just do it for now. It can be temporary, but I need it. And I also need you to get me on progesterone. I need you to get this IUD out of me right away. And within 3 months, we need to test my hormones so that I can better understand what's going on here. And honestly, like one of the reasons I have the audacity to walk into like 3 different doctors and tell them that is because of working with Ashley. We haven't even talked about this part yet, right? But the amount of confidence and sovereignty and the trust in my own body and the permission to take back that control and that intuition, to have the audacity to tell the medical system, no, I don't care what you think. I'm actually the person who knows what's going on here, and you will listen to me and you will help me solve this. I don't know that I would have been able to do. I know I wouldn't be able to have done that without the confidence and the trust and the self-knowing that has been a gift and a byproduct of like a decade's worth of work with you. So there we go. That's it for now, until you ask me another question.
No, I love that so much. And I'm so glad you made that point, because that's another thing that we are really going to dive into in Metamorphosis. Is I'm going to go through the 6 modules in just a moment. And I really don't want you to think of it as like modules, because it's really not an online course at all. It's a mentorship, it's a group, but one of the big themes is finding our voice, and also boundaries. And this is part of rising into our sovereignty. And again, this may be work that you all have done before. Of course, Casey had, of course, I've done it before, but it has never been needed and more just undeniable than now. Like I cannot keep going in the way that I had. And I think many women get to that at this point in midlife where it is just not an option to keep going in the way that we did before. And that's why there are many divorces. There are many women or people, rising up and saying, you know what, this doesn't work. This doesn't work for me, or changing careers, or moving across country, or whatever it is. But for sure in our medical system and in our medical needs and advocating for ourselves. I love that. And then also the boundaries and really that self, the level that we take our self-awareness to, and the level that we take our self-inquiry to. Like this is like a master's program for everything that we've been doing in Yoga Psyche. So like this is really to step into our full queendom, without unabashedly, without apology, with unwavering, again, unequivocal. And it's what the world is demanding of us. And if we want to see the world change, we have to be the ones that change it. And we have to be the ones that change the narrative around women aging, around middle age, around menopause, around female health. We have to be the ones that advocate and are modeling that change. So thank you for being that model, Casey. You're so impeccable yourself. I just want to honor all your work in the world and who you are. And thank you for being here and sharing that. Yay.
I love you. Thank you.
I love you. Love you so much. Love you. Love you. I want to see you. I'm waiting to move back to LA. All right. Thank you so much, Casey. Okay. I'm going to give you all just a little insight. And then for all the VIPs on the call, I am going to stick around. So definitely stick around for our private Q&A, because I cannot wait to answer your questions. So for those of you, that are here, and, Janelle, I'm going to have you, I'm posting this right now. Whoops. Let's do this. There we go. Oh, it's not going to do that. Okay. I'm going to post this link for all of you in Zoom, and then we'll get it posted for all of you on YouTube as well that are watching. At least we got it zooming, live streaming on YouTube. So let me just take a moment to explain the vision of metamorphosis. Metamorphosis, as you know, I really explain sort of where this has come from, is it's here for us as, I would say, part mystery school, part mentorship, but mainly midlife and menopause, perimenopause mastery. Really an opportunity for us to go deep and collate all of the work that we need to do so that you look at this journey of the 6 months. It's a 6-month journey. We're going to start on June 13th. So we start in about 2 weeks. We'll have our first opening ceremony call on Thursday, June 13th, and we'll go for 6 months. So it's for us to have an incubator. I don't even like the term accelerator, right? Because it's that image of like, oh, we got to do something faster. We got to, the way Metamorphosis was named was about a month ago, my daughter Bodhi, I bought her the caterpillars that you can get that then you keep at home and then they turn into chrysalis and then butterflies, right? And as I was going through this and beginning to gestate on, okay, what exactly, what's the name of this course? What's this going to be? And then all of a sudden one day I went upstairs from working from our guest house here, and I went upstairs to the house and the butterflies, had made it into the chrysalis stage. And it's just so magical to even conceive. And it's such a, it's a simple metaphor, but it is truly so astounding to consider, because where I feel like I've been and still am, by the way, is in this chrysalis form. And what I noticed in the last 2 years was how difficult it was for me to stay and give myself permission to be in that chrysalis form, to not know what was going to come next, to not know what I was doing in my career. And yes, we launched the Haven, but I knew like the next body of work wasn't quite clear. I knew, it wasn't Yoga Psyche Soul that's put on the back burner right now. It may come back in another iteration, but I knew something was coming through, something was brewing, but I didn't know what it was. And at the same time, here I am going through such a personal struggle, a really deep, dark, honestly, a dark night of the soul. And I don't use that term lightly. And really struggling, where I was at the rock bottom about a year ago, telling Aaron, I don't know what's happening. I don't think you understand. I don't recognize my brain. I don't recognize myself. And then finally I said to him, I think I'm depressed. And he just looked at me and he was like, you think? Yeah, I think you're depressed. And I was laughing because like he could see it on the outside. I couldn't see it on the inside, but that's what happens with that caterpillar in the chrysalis, is they melt down into the gook, right? Into the liquefied form. And the first thing that begins to stir is what's called their imaginal cells. There are imaginal cells in that caterpillar that begin to activate automatically, of course, unconsciously by its own impetus, flourish and transmute into a butterfly. And when you're in that chrysalis stage, I was watching these caterpillars hanging there by a thread, by the way, hanging by a fucking thread. And that's exactly what I felt like I'm still kind of just beginning to not even quite emerge, right? Is they don't know. They can't tune into the outside world. They're just turning all of their antenna inward, literally, right? They're not aware of what's going on in the outer world. And it's amorphous. It's not yet formed. It's liquefied. That is how I've been feeling the last couple of years, and realizing how difficult it is to be in that phase with our cultural norms and pressures and the patriarchy and capitalism and the pressure, right? To know what you're doing or have a plan, or be defined in some kind of way. And the feminine is that messy middle, right? And so that is where the name Metamorphosis came from. Is I looked at these butterflies and I was like, of course, perimenopause and menopause is the chrysalis phase. We're not the one thing, but we're not yet the other thing either. And it's fucking hard to not know where we are or what we are. right? But if we don't give ourselves permission to live and breathe and dance and play and be in that and not know, we will never fully get to the other side and fully emerge as butterflies. Or another analogy in that beautiful queen of a butterfly, right? Another analogy is if we don't really do that deep inner work, if we don't really do that shadow work and ask ourselves, have I made peace with everything that has come before? Am I still holding resentments? Am I still holding grievances? Are there aspects of myself, my psyche, my personality that need to change, my life that need to change in order for me to really create the life that I want to? This is that threshold, the crossroads, right? In my priestess training, the priestess is a guardian of the crossroads. And perimenopause, menopause is perhaps I would say the biggest crossroads of our lives. And it is completely ignored and underserved in our culture, where we may now be doing some ritual for our girls that are becoming, beginning to menstruate. We have baby showers. We, give presents and offer up to people that get married or have a baby. There are certain social norms and rites of passages for these bigger thresholds in our lives. There is nothing yet for perimenopause and menopause. I mean, you might be lucky and have a little goddess circle that does something, and I'm going to do something for my 50th birthday this summer and have a really mindful, conscious ritual. But we don't do that in our culture. And instead, what are we doing? We're trying to, hide and preserve our beauty and stay looking like we're 25 or 35. And I don't really have an opinion if people do anything, whatever they do, injectables, Botox, whatever. But if we're just trying to hold on to that, we're not allowing ourselves to cross that threshold and say, I am 50. I am in menopause. I'm a fucking wise woman. I'm fucking strong. I have a voice. I have a clear vision. And guess what? My intuition is so clear, I can help serve you. So this is what I'm here to do. And that is what metamorphosis is. It's our chrysalis. It's our incubator to take 6 months very consciously of your own journey and say, I'm doing this. I'm going to do this inner work. I'm going to devote to myself. I'm going to give myself some time and energy and love and do it with amazing women and some frameworks and some guidance and some incredible guest experts to really step into this threshold, nourish myself, do that inner work, and then see what wants to come out on the other side. And when we come out on the other side, we will have a closing ceremony and we will have a rite of passage and a priestess ritual to really stake our claim and say, this is where I am now. And I'm going to take a vow that I'm not going to look at those women who are 30 or 40 or 25 or whatever and be jealous or think I should or whatever, because I am here now. And this is what an empowered, wise woman looks like. So that is the essence of metamorphosis. Now, I will get into all the details quickly. We are just so far over, of course. Here is the link right now. And by the way, I put it in the chat. The sales page is not up yet. The sales page will be up by tomorrow. But once again, we're in the feminine mystery and there are a lot of moving parts and it is not complete. So this is ready for you right now. And all the details are on there, but you'll have another page to look at by tomorrow. So the idea with metamorphosis is, please don't think of it as an online course. That is not what it is. It's a mentorship. I am here with you. I am working very deeply. It will be a smaller group of women, and we are going to spiral very deeply together amongst each other and with me and our beloved guest teachers. So each module, each month is a theme. Those of you who've been with me before, you'll recognize the framework, which I like to repeat, rinse, and repeat because it's very helpful, is the 5 layers of self, which comes from the koshas, which are the 5 aspects of ourself. The physical body is first. That's going to be June, because we need to start with getting everyone stabilized, whatever that looks like in your hormones, in your health, tackling nutrition, fitness, of course, hormone optimization. We have Alyssa Goodman coming, who's a functional nutritionist, and she's going to talk all things: supplements, hormones, blood work, nutrients, diet, intermittent fasting, keto, all of those things we're going to cover in month 1. So the first month is body. The second month is mind. That's where we started today. The psychology of psychology of midlife. Of course, we'll go much deeper into hormones and mental health and neurotransmitters. I want to give you some frameworks there so you really understand. But also, we're going to frame it around Jung's 7 tasks of midlife. So that's the second month of July. And our guest teacher for that month is going to be Dr. Marisa Snyder. Marisa Snyder is an incredible expert in menopause. She's based out of San Diego. She's a functional doctor, and she's going to go in more into the hormones, but also into the mindset of menopause and midlife. I've been a big fan of her work, and then randomly I just met her at an event, a book release a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh my God, will you come and be on? I really love your work, and it's a perfect fit." So we're going to double up to some degree on the hormones and the biology because that is such a big piece. And obviously it's not my genius zone, but I want to make sure that's really covered in this mentorship so you feel like you're well supported and you have a lot of resources for that. So Marisa Snyder is coming in July. By the way, each month, I'll just start here and say you have 3 calls a month. Now, I don't want to overwhelm you. There's not going to be a big online course. Although all of these things will be added in and you will have, of course, all the recordings, but it's not like you have to go and study on hours. It's really more about our time together live. And then you will have homework. And I think I will give a book each month so we can be having a book club and do one book together each month for those of you that are really interested, but that's so not necessary because listen, this midlife menopause thing is already fucking overwhelming. So I'm not like trying to add more. I want this to feel really nourishing and vivifying and flourishing for you. So the first call will be a call with me, a 90-minute teaching call where we really go deep on the topic, PowerPoint presentations, of course, a facilitation exercise or more, guided meditations, but really a juicy call for us to get really into the material and work it, like a co-working kind of session. It's not just like presenting, teaching. That's not how this is rolling. The second call is the guest teacher, which is a 60-minute call with them, and then always open for Q&A after, so you can really get get some personal guidance from them. The third call is a straight up coaching call, which you can submit questions beforehand, and I'll be on with you all live, and we can really go deep on whatever it is, personal, professional, relationship, sexuality, in a very contained environment. So those are the 3 calls of the month, plus there's some added bonus calls. Then the third month, so we have body, we have mind. The third month is emotion. And in this, we're going to really start unpacking the framework of the heroine's journey. So these are the 2 big psycho-spiritual frameworks we're working with: Jung's 7 tasks of midlife and the heroine's journey by Maureen Murdoch. So the heroine's journey is exquisite, and I really want to unpack each of those stages. Along with emotions, we're going to add in core wound work and trauma resolution, because as I said, if you haven't done this kind of work before and really resolved, and I don't even know that I believe like our trauma is totally resolved in our lifetimes, right? So I don't love that as like an end goal. But for those of you who have some bigger core wounds or trauma work that is still really triggering, we're going to work on that in month 3, and that's emotions. I mean, you'll be working on it throughout, but definitely in month 3. So by the way, we have a special fast action bonus for anyone who joins in the next 2 days. So by Thursday, if you join, you will get an additional call, which is a somatic practices and therapy for core wound and trauma resolution work, a very specific practice for those of you that want to work a real piece of material in that trauma resolution and how that might be showing up in our bodies. So month 3 is emotion. Month 4 is energy. We're going to talk, and by the way, month 3, we have Tracy Stanley coming in. And no, month 3, we have Chara Carruthers coming, who is an Ayurvedic specialist, incredible, beautiful teacher. And she's going to come in and talk a lot about the Ayurvedic perspective of menopause, self-care, midlife, and all the different practices that we can weave in the Ayurvedic lifestyle compendium. Month 4 is energy. So we're talking nervous system regulation. We're talking more about the hormones and really how to optimize and embrace this femininity and heal our nervous systems that are very wired in this masculine way, among other things. But our energy body is what we'll be working on. And Tracy Stanley is coming in and going to lead us through a yoga nidra and talk about rest and the radical responsibility of us to really reshape our lives around rest. So I can't wait to have Tracy Stanley in talking about midlife, menopause, and rest and yoga nidra. And then month 5, we have spirit. So this is where we will get into the spiritual journey of this phase of life and and really connecting into your soul and what are the deeper spiritual needs, your dharma, looking at it through the lens of your life as a spiritual journey. We've talked a lot about this. Your life is your curriculum, but we're going to do a really powerful practice in this month 5 called your spiritual autobiography. Now, this is where we're going to do a deeper, writing and exploration exercise to really make peace and look back and reframe your life as a spiritual autobiography, as a memoir. And this is the power of words and precision, perspective to alchemize and bring healing and make meaning, because that's a very big developmental task at this phase of life, is to make meaning of what our life has been so far and to consider what we want to create. So you can, again, I want you to think of metamorphosis as this kind of tipping point where this 6 months is you really doing that alchemy. And there's going to be really practical things like clearing out your closet, like clearing out your home, reinventing yourself, really allowing yourself to shapeshift your identity and explore what is pleasure for you? What is your new identity? What kinds of things do you want to let go of? And like, that's not me anymore. That doesn't fit. And this is what brings me joy and, beauty and passion. And this is how I am reshaping my identity moving forward. And then the final month 6, so sorry, the guest teacher for that is going to be Terry Cole, my very dear friend. I was just with her this weekend. She's so excited to come in and be with you all on boundaries, voiced, really practical scripts on, finding your boundaries in your voice with your partner, with yourself, with your work, with your energy, with the world. Terry's boundary badass. She has Boundary Boot Camp. She's a best-selling author. By the way, she's also coming out with a book this year called The Father Wound, for high functioning codependence. So if that resonates for any of you, that will also be a topic of conversation, the father wound, and looking at how our overly functional, high functioning and ambition can actually be coming from a wound. So that's another piece of work that we'll be doing. And then month 6 is based on a framework called the Empress Archetype. There's a beautiful book that we're going to be working with this month, really going into the Empress Archetype and beholding that, activating that. And that is sensuality, sexuality, boundaries, sovereignty, autonomy, but really ending with this embodiment of the Empress. And so we're moving forward truly like that queen, but with a very particular bent. So this is the archetype and some of the work that we'll be doing in month 7, but we're going to be weaving that heroine's journey throughout because that's a really big piece. A lot of this is going to be looking at, again, and dismantling our own internalized patriarchy, our own loss of connection with the feminine, our relationship to the masculine, that polarity. So I'm so excited. I want to add into this. So let me add both of these links here so that if you are interested, you can either sign up right now and jump on that bonus, or if you want to chat with me and you would like to book a call, you are welcome to book a call, but I just ask that you not book a call unless you are genuinely interested in joining Metamorphosis, because we want to hold those spaces for the people that are really interested. So here is, this again is just the initial page for Metamorphosis, and we will send you a bigger sales page later today, tonight when we send you the recording, and then there's the clarity call. So please book a call with me if you're interested, if you want to chat more, if you know you're in, you can also, there's a 6-month payment plan. You're welcome to jump on that. And I can't wait to get started. We are starting in 2 weeks. So thank you for your extreme patience today. Thank you for being here. And I love you all so much. I see so many familiar faces, and those of you that I don't know, welcome, welcome. And all of you that are VIPs, stick around if you can, and we're going to jump right back on our VIP coaching call. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And I will see you tomorrow. We will figure out how to get this into the Facebook group, for goodness sakes. All right. Thank you. Oh, that's why it's not. Okay. Let's do one thing. Hold on a second. Let's do this. Oh my goodness.